What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Today, your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content rolls on with the Sorcerer class preview. That time has finally come at last, my friends. As always, hey, if you like what you're watching, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Today, this episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content was brought to you in part by our newest patron, Arcania. My friend, thank you so much for helping out. I definitely recognized your name when it came down on our Discord from Twitter. Super sweet to see a longtime retweeter join the Black Dragon Disciples, and it really truly does mean the world. Now, let's talk sorcerers. Okay, so in Pathfinder 1st Edition, the sorcerer was the guy who showed up not with the spell book, but with the intrinsic power to cast spells because of his bloodline, because of that which he came from lingering in his blood, allowing him to be awesome. Rather than having a spell book and being able to prep various different spells at various levels of play, the sorcerer had a limited selection of spells that they were very good at using. On flavor, I prefer the spontaneous casters, that is to say the ones that don't use spell books, over the ones that do, because that's just me personally. I too don't really like studying and think if you're good at something, you just do it because you're good at it, which of course is to say nothing of the power of the wizard, especially in older editions of D&D. In Pathfinder, the sorcerer had special powers tied to their bloodline, which was no longer just a flavor thing, that allowed them to excel. These bloodline powers and bloodline arcana were so powerful that a lot of casters would dip around into the various sorcerer bloodlines to buff what they were already doing. Blaster Druid or Shocking Grasp Magi could definitely run into the cross-blooded Orc Draconic Sorcerer for a huge buff to damage. Your Bard could dip Fey or Infernal Sorcerer for compulsion buff or charm buff respectively. And really across the bajillion different bloodlines Pathfinder 1st Edition saw, it just keeps going on from there. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, sorcerers still receive their powers from the bloodline, but now the sorcerer's bloodline determines the sorcerer's spell list. And before we hit that quote, here's the new art for Seoni in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, much less sexualized than Pathfinder 1st Edition. I'm not going to ramble on it for 20 minutes, but good job, Paizo. Now, quote, you pick your bloodline at first level, which tells you which spell list you use: Arcane, Divine, Primal, or Occult. It also defines some of the spells you know. For instance, the Demonic Bloodline gives you the Divine spell list and the Fear spell at first level, in addition to 2 other spells that you choose yourself from the Divine list. In some cases, the special spells from your bloodline come from other lists. For example, the Demonic Bloodline gives you Slow when you learn 3rd level spells for the Sin of Sloth, and Disintegrate when you learn 6th level spells for the sin of disintegrating people, I suppose. There are a couple more, and here we see, first and foremost, the Demonic Bloodline. Its spell list, like we said, is Divine, which is huge, because sorcerers were just arcane casters in 1st Edition. Now, it kind of feels like all of the spontaneous casters of Pathfinder 1st Edition are being rolled together to create the Sorcerer. KJS, if you're still out there with us, we've been talking a little bit back and forth on the channel about my predictions for the Oracle. Well, here you have it. It looks like, at least right now, the Oracle is getting rolled in to the Sorcerer. Anywho, signature skills for the Demonic Bloodline are Athletics, Deception, Intimidation, and Religion. The granted spells are the Cantrip, Detect Magic, Fear at 1st level, Resist Energy at 2nd level, Slow at 3rd, Divine Wrath at 4th, Banishment at level 5, Disintegrate at level 6, Divine Decree at level 7, Power Word Stun at 8, and Meteor Swarm at 9th. The initial bloodline power we will receive is known as Gagns Jaws. The advanced powers, Swamp of Sloth 2, the greater power, Abyssal Wrath 2. Much like the Cleric, and hey, if you missed our Cleric discussion, follow this card right up here. We'll take you to it. The Sorcerer will receive powers, which are special spells that you get only from specific classes, and they're cast using spell points rather than spell slots. They also automatically heighten to the highest level of spell you can cast, which is super powerful. You start out with a number of spell points per day equal to your Charisma mod. The first of those powers we're seeing now is Gagns Jaws. It's a Necromancy power level 1. Casting time, 1 action. Somatic, 1 action. Verbal, its duration is a minute. Your mouth transforms into a shadowy maw, bristling with pointed teeth. These jaws grant you an unarmed attack you're trained in, dealing 1d6 piercing damage. They have the finesse trait, which means you're using your dexterity. Attacks with your jaws have the following enhancement. If the target was living, you gain 1d4 temporary HP. Heighten it to level 2, your jaws gain a +1 bonus to attack and +1 damage die, not 2 damage. And the temporary hit points increases to 2d4. Heighten 4 increases it to 2, heighten it to 6 for 3, and 8 for a +4, 5d4 damage healed on you when you bite the dude. Super good. Next thing we're looking at here today are the Bloodlines we'll see in the Pathfinder playtest. We're not seeing a whole lot. Paizo says they want to see how people react to the new style. We will be seeing the following. The Aberrant Bloodline, which allows us to cast from the Occult spell list, which I need to know more about, by the way. The Angelic and Demonic Bloodlines, both Divine. The Draconic and Imperial, both Arcane. And the Fey Bloodline, which is now a Primal caster, which means you're a Druid with your charisma. That's sweet. I'm super down. Again, it definitely feels like a lot of classes are kind of just getting rolled into the Sorcerer. The Psychic classes, the Oracle, to some degree perhaps also the Inquisitor, the Hunter, because he was a spontaneous primal caster. This is a very interesting turn of events for me as both a player and a GM, because again, I like the flavor of Sorcerers better. This channel is in fact named after a 3.5 Sorcerer that I made so long ago. But we're not here to wax nostalgic. We're here to talk about cool stuff. Spontaneous casting is getting a little bit of an overhaul in Pathfinder 2nd Edition as well. Quote, the Sorcerer gets the same number of spells per day as a wizard, but she has a number of spells she knows permanently instead of prepping them from a spellbook each day. The spells she knows make up her spell repertoire. That means she can choose which spell to cast each time she casts a spell, instead of needing to plan ahead. The Sorcerer now also learns spells at the same character level as the Wizard. 2nd level spells at 3rd level spells at 5th, so on and so forth. As you level up, you learn new spells and can replace some of the spells you previously had with new ones. This lets you get rid of some spells that were great options when they were your highest level, but maybe aren't worth casting anymore. Perhaps like a color spray we can't heighten, but one imagines color spray will be 100% heightenable in 2nd edition. As per the norm, the Sorcerer's spellcasting is based on their inborn magical potency, so the Sorcerer does use charisma for spell rolls and spell DCs. That's really good in Pathfinder 2nd edition because resonance is keyed to your charisma, which means that the Sorcerer is one of those classes right alongside the Bard, one assumes, that will be super good with magic items because charisma is such a big part of the way that class works. Anywho, next up we've got some class features. The Sorcerer gains their advanced power at level 6, their greater bloodline power at 10th. As with other spellcasters, their proficiency with spell rolls and spell DCs increases to expert at 12th, master at 16th, and legendary at level 19. We also see that the Sorcerer is getting a new class feature known as spontaneous heightening. Quote, as mentioned before, some spells in your lower level spell slots get less useful as you go up in level. However, there are some spells you might want to cast with any of your slots. The spontaneous heightening feature lets you choose 2 spells at the start of each day that you can cast as their heightened versions using any of your spell slots. This means if you want your Angelic Sorcerer to be able to cast 1st level heal, 2nd level heal, and 3rd level heal, you can choose your 1st level heal spell rather than needing to learn the spell in your spell repertoire at all 3 spell levels. Kind of feels the same as the 1st edition Sorcerer that would spend a full round action to apply metamagic feats to spells. Last up, we've got a whole slew of Sorcerer feats. Many of these feats that we're seeing today are metamagic feats, which they of course share with the other casters. The first one we're looking at is Overwhelming Spell. They receive it at 8th level, and it allows a spell that deals acid, cold, electricity, or fire damage to ignore the first 10 points of a target's resistance. Not bad. Super relevant in the high level play. We also see Dangerous Sorcery, which increases the damage of your spells by their spell level, with the exception of cantrips, as well as Blood Magic at 8th level, which lets you use the magic potential in your blood to gain temporary hit points, or hand them out to a target of your spell if you're bleeding when you cast it. Just don't like, oh, I'm bleeding, magic missile. We're good, you're healing, walk it off. That's mean, don't do that. We will also be seeing in Pathfinder 2nd Edition a new cycle of feats known as the Evolution feats. Arcane Evolution makes your Arcane Sorcerer trained in a skill and lets you add a spell from a scroll to your spell repertoire for the day when you prep each morning. Divine Evolution lets you channel energy like a cleric. Occult Evolution gives you a skill and lets you pick a spell with the mental trait to add to your repertoire each day. Man, I need to see bards. I need to know if bards are the occult casters. And Primal Evolution lets you cast Summon Nature's Ally as an innate spell once per day. Okay, so no evolution points, no eidolons. Still though, that's pretty cool. And it just kind of reinforces that the Hunter is now a Sorcerer, the Oracle is now a Sorcerer, the Psychic is now a Sorcerer, etc., etc. The Sorcerer is becoming just a big class catch-all. And although that feels kind of weird because I feel like some class features of those classes may fall to the wayside, it's still pretty neat flavor-wise for one of my favorite classes. I was talking with Adam at IOPC about this earlier. One thing that's kind of missing for this to be the true Oracle conversion is the curse that the Oracle received, and really, curses could be archetypes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. You could take those feats to get that neg and then expand it with other feats as you level up if that's what you wanted to do, because really everyone can benefit from them. At 20th level, sorcerers can take a feat to gain 10th level spells of their tradition, or Wellspring Spell, which is a meta magic feat that lets you cast a 5th level or lower spell once per minute without expending the spell slot. Spell batteries are super cool. So this blog isn't very long. There's not a lot of information today, but at the same time, there's just so much going on here. I still don't 100% know how I feel. On the one hand, I think it's really neat that my Fey Bloodline Sorcerer, a very popular Sorcerer Bloodline, looking at all those kitsunes out there, for compulsion spells, now mechanically is casting off the primal spell list, which means they're casting off the same spell list as a druid, which is a huge redefinition of what the bloodline means. And I think I like it. It tastes weird, I'll say. It's a big change, but it also, in a roundabout way, means that we're seeing more than just Core plus Alchemist in our classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because they're all showing up, in this case, a lot of them dressed up as the Sorcerer. Guys, what are you thinking about this? Are you playing a Sorcerer in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? And if so, what bloodline and what spell lists are we looking to dig out here? And hey, if you're playing 2nd Edition online, might you want to play it on Fantasy Grounds? Because if so, hey, we're giving away one copy of Fantasy Grounds Ultimate Edition. One copy is good enough for you and all your players. Follow this card right up here to enter in that giveaway. And hey, remember guys, patronage at any tier gets you an extra entry in all of our giveaways. Anywho, that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and again, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content drops this Saturday.